Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 23rd of June, comes to you from London. And I know just by looking at my news alerts, these are my technical analysis alerts, new in Updata Enterprise. I just know from looking at this, because they're color coded, red means downside targets, negative signals, green means positive signals. And so I just immediately know, just by looking at this, that I'm getting lots of new alerts and targets this morning. So here we see US nat gas, this is TTF gas, is up this morning, but starting to give some downside targets. That's the beauty of these updates. These are real-time updates on what's happening. So Brent crude giving another downside target. The same for TTF. Slightly oversold on British pound. We're moving back up through the Bollinger Bands there. The VIX volatility, trend change to bearish on the euro because we've fallen through the cloud. So I can just literally go through these. The dollar index bullish, we've gone up through the cloud, quite a big move there. A 90 bar low on the US 10-year yield, so that's quite interesting. And I can just go through and see these changes as well. So all in all, pretty interesting. And we're seeing here, this is every power market in Europe. This data coming from OTC Global Holdings. And this is a great way to just keep an eye on all the power and gas markets in Europe with this model data, which we supply as standard with Updata Professional and Enterprise to our clients. So really great data that's included there. As well. So looking at the energy mix, the big story this morning is carbon prices are breaking down yesterday out of that congestion zone. We had an ascending a symmetrical triangle, and we've broken down, and we've got new downside targets here on carbon and on the 60-minute chart. Really quite interesting seeing that. Remembering this is my daily chart and my 60-minute chart, so my medium and my long-term view, and then the daily, 60-minute and 1 minute. So if you're trading carbon, these 1 minute charts are absolutely vital, so keep an eye on those. And if we look at Brent crude, down a further 2% today, really just nudging this below this 110 level now, 109.50. So really quite interesting. But have we found the floor? Was yesterday the floor? We've got some mixed targets, but new downside ones kicking in this morning. So if you're trading oil, you need to keep an eye on those. And the same is true for WTI. Will WTI go through this 100 level? We've got a downside target not yet activated that is pushing that way. I'm running here, of course, on Refinitiv Icon. You can be running on Bloomberg, on Tradeport, on lots of different data services. So Updata is just a desktop software system that sits on top of whatever data you've already got, and you can just switch in your data sources as you wish. So we're seeing US nat gas just teetering along here. We were neutral today. We've given the resistance and support levels we need to watch. Coal sitting up 2%, so that's doing a little bit better for a breakout there. And emissions, as we mentioned, that break lower, so that's one to watch. The TTF is up nearly 5%, holding a lot of the gains that we saw earlier this month. And really just finding some cloud support here. We've got targets in both directions, but this morning we have favoured the upside on TTF, and we were actually a little change when we did that this morning, but we've gained that 5%. Key thing is, can we hold it? We've seen most days the gains coming off towards the end of the day, just showing a little bit of inherent weakness in the market, and we are just starting to wander through the cloud on MBP, hence our neutral stance there to clients first thing this morning. Looking at German power though, breaking out of that 250 level, 255, so that's really quite key that we are just breaking higher there, and that's a good sign for power prices. And we've got these upside targets. Of course, we put out our long-term power reports, and Nordic power, we've been bullish for several days on Nordic power, just continuing to push higher and higher and higher, reaching for these targets. So that's really quite key there on Nordic power. Taking a look at the markets in general, we start by looking at the dollar index. Remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart, my long term, my medium term, and the short term view of the market. So it gives me multiple views. We're seeing here that dollar strength really still continuing to kick in. That means that euro weakness is back. We shouldn't be surprised to see the euro weakening in line with these bigger trends. So we might get short term respite, but then we fall back, and that's really quite key. Looking at sterling, we're sitting at 122 against the dollar. Again, weak on all three time frames there, and against the euro 116, nudging that 116 level. 115 has been touched, and that now is a key level to watch for sterling falling away there. Inherent weakness in the UK economy starting to show through. Bitcoin did get below that $20,000 mark this morning, but it's actually just bounced back above 20,000. But the key thing is we are really now bearish on these charts for Bitcoin. The S&P 500 index didn't change much yesterday. The lagging line is right on the weekly cloud, but of course the daily cloud has been bearish all year, hence our bearish stance for the markets. And the Nasdaq is actually now below on the weekly cloud. So really quite interesting there that we are breaking lower. Downside targets, you can read these off on your charts, really quite straightforward. You just can't ignore the targets. We're seeing the futures up slightly this morning, so it does suggest that we will see markets recover a little bit, but the reality is the trend is down. The VIX volatility back below 30, but again, this VIX is just starting to, we're seeing here a succession of higher lows, higher highs. That's just trending through on that weekly cloud, and the reality is the market is becoming more and more fearful. No big surprises there. The FTSE futures down 0.5%, just couldn't get above that resistance despite having the oil majors in the mix. The market is just being dragged down by the rest of the constituents. And if we look at the DAX in Germany, we're down nearly 1% there this morning. Again, still in that bearish territory pretty much all year. Back below the weekly cloud, really significant there that we are now below the weekly cloud on the lagging line as well. Just not looking good for markets all around. Japan is down very slightly overnight, little change there, but the reality is, again, we're looking pretty bearish there. Looking at Chinese stocks, we're actually up 1.6%. We are just seeing them performing better than the Western markets at the moment, having bounced on that 3,000 level. So that's quite key. And the Sensex in India is actually up 1%. But of course, it is still looking pretty bearish. Not yet through on the lagging line, but we do have these downside targets for the Sensex. The Aussie market up 0.3%, but has really had a really tough June, falling away. This market was leading other markets. It was doing better, and now it's playing catch up in terms of doing worse. So the Aussie market is now looking as bearish as other Western markets. We've looked at the energy mix, taking a look at some of the soft commodities. We've got wheat down 2%. That's just starting to fall away into medium-term bearish territory, pulling back. So that's good news for inflation. But the reality is, long-term, we are still in a bull trend. Corn, we're down nearly 2% here as well, not quite below the cloud yet on the medium-term chart, but on that long-term chart, still a very bullish picture. All eyes on gold. Everyone's asking me, why isn't gold running? The reality is these trends, precious metals is the last of the big cycles to get going, and it's just not happening yet. Watch for a fall below 1800. That would not be good for gold, and if we break above 1875, that would also be very good. Looking really for that move above 2000. We've got targets to 2400 if we can break that. And also what's interesting is we have got this potential to activate a downside target. So we may go lower before we go higher. Everyone sees gold as a one-way bet, but the reality is it's about timing. Looking at the US 10-year yield, we talked about that coming back in the alerts there that we had this morning, and so we are just seeing that falling back to short-term bearish, but the long-term targets for yields are there, 5.5%, 4.1%, 3.65%. We are seeing these numbers all just kicking in. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.